All right, good evening, everyone. I'm just going to turn up my volume here a little bit. My name is Catherine, and I work with SEB Housing. This is the information session for the 3 affordable condominiums being made available at Christies Way in Holbrook, Massachusetts. And so the purpose of this info session is to give a little bit of background information on the condos and also cover the application, the eligibility and lottery processes, and what to expect after the lottery. So if you have any questions during the session, you're encouraged to either type them into the chat through Zoom, or I will be asking throughout the presentation if anyone has questions, so you can unmute yourself at that time. When you came into the room, you were muted just to make sure that we minimize any outside noise. So this is a live session. It's being recorded, and it's going to be saved to SEB Housing's YouTube channel. So it'll be available for viewing later on for anyone who wasn't able to attend that wants to take a look. After tonight, if you have any questions, the best way to reach out to SEB Housing is by emailing us at info@sebhousing.com, or you can call us at that 617-782 number that's on your screen. I do have some slides up on the screen. If anybody's joining by not by phone, you should be able to see those. So again, let me know if you have any questions throughout or any trouble hearing me or viewing the screen, anything like that. Just want to start out with some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we are an off-site affordable housing consulting group. So we've been hired by the developer to market the affordable condos, conduct this information session, collect and review applications to determine applicants' eligibility for the affordable housing program, and also to run the lottery a little bit further down the line. Oh, you guys are saying you can't hear me. Is anybody else having trouble hearing, or is it just 2 people?
I hear you pretty well, thank you.
Okay.
Mary.
Great, thanks for letting me know. I saw that 2 of you were still connecting to audio, so I think it should be okay on my end now. So I'll continue. So like I said, SEB Housing, we are not the sales team. We're not the real estate agent or anything like that, but we have been hired by the developer to process applications for the lottery and determine applicants' eligibility for the affordable housing program. We haven't seen the homes in person, but in the initial phases, we will be your main point of contact rather than the development or sales team. So further along in the process, you will have more direct contact with the owner, and you'll be invited forward if you are one of the top households on the waiting list following the lottery. So there's kind of 2 broad steps in the process that I'll be discussing. The first is to apply for the affordable housing program. So that's what you're doing now if you're interested in this opportunity. And when you submit your lottery application to SEB Housing, we can answer any questions you have on the affordable housing program. We'll also do a preliminary review of your application. If you're eligible for the affordable housing program, you'll be entered into the lottery, and after the lottery is run, you'll be given a position on the waiting list. The second step in the process involves the process of actually reserving or purchasing one of the condos. So your opportunity to be able to do that will depend on your placement following the lottery, so your placement on those waiting lists. If you haven't taken a look at the information packet yet that is posted on our website under this opportunity, on page 11, it lists more about the approximate timelines for the entire process. Like I said, if you go to our website, www.sebhousing.com, and you select I want to buy after clicking on affordable housing opportunities, you'd then be able to select Christies Way. So this is a homeownership opportunity, so that's why you're selecting I want to buy, and then you'll be taken to a page specific to this property, Christies Way. That listing has a downloadable version of the lottery application. It also has a downloadable version of what's called a deed rider, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and the information packet, which has a lot of the information that I'm going to be drawing from during this information session. So even if you attend the session, we always suggest that anyone who's interested in these housing opportunities takes a look at that information packet, because I won't be able to review everything that's in there tonight, and a lot of the information will be helpful to you if you're interested in purchasing one of these condos. So the first thing you'll need to do if you are interested, like I said, is to submit the lottery application. And you can submit that to us in one of several ways. So you could email or scan it to us at info@scbhousing.com. You can fax it to us if you have access to a fax, and that's your preferred way of submitting it. The fax number is on the first page of the application. You can send it to us by regular mail, or you can drop, if you're in the Needham area, you can drop it in our 24-hour secure drop box at the office in Needham, which is at 257 Hillside Ave. So whichever one of those options works best for you, we just encourage you to get your lottery application in early. It's fairly brief, so it's only going to take you a few minutes to complete. No supporting documentation is needed at this early stage in the process. So you don't need to submit pay stubs or tax returns or anything like that to apply to the lottery. But later on in the process, if after the lottery you are one of the top households on the waiting list, you will need to submit all of that supporting documentation later on. Same thing with a mortgage pre-approval. So it's not required that you submit your mortgage pre-approval with this application, but we recommend that you obtain a mortgage pre-approval around the time of your application, even though you're not going to need to submit that to us until later on in the process if you're one of those top households on the waiting list. So it's really just a lottery application you need to get in if you're interested in this opportunity. Those applications are due by February 19th, and they have to be postmarked or delivered by that date in order to be considered. And then so the condos themselves, so these condos are already built. They're ready. We've been told that the market rate condos within the community are already occupied. It's just the affordable condos that are left to be purchased. And the condos are going to be sold at an affordable price to households with incomes at or below, with annual incomes, I should say, at or below 80% of the area median income. So Christies Way, it's a new homeownership community located in Holbrook. There is a total of 26 condominiums. 3 of them are going to be sold as affordable units to households with annual incomes below that 80% of area median income threshold that I mentioned. The affordable home addresses are 2, 7, and 12 Christies Way. All of the homes feature 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, and a private garage with an additional parking spot in the driveway. The sales price for the condos is $260,700, and those prices are significantly below what the market rent homes or condos have sold for in the community. From what I could see, the market rate condos have gone for between $430,000 to about $450,000. And for these affordable condos, there is a $250 a month condo fee, and that's going to cover your master insurance, landscaping, snow removal from the roadway, and reserve funds for the community. We get this question a lot, so I wanted to mention it. So the tax rate, given the tax rate in Holbrook for 2024, owners are going to pay about $3,500 a year in taxes. And those taxes are figured on the affordable sales price. So you're not paying an amount that is a function of the market rate sales prices. That $3,500 is the amount, approximately the amount that you would pay based on the $260,700 purchase price. So like I said, the condos are already completed, market rate units are already occupied. The developer has mentioned that they're open to scheduling an open house for potential buyers to attend. They don't have a date set yet. I will be asking about that as we get further along in the marketing process. And if you're one of those top households, or even probably everybody who's in the lottery, will let you know when that open house is if you're interested in attending that. So since these homes are going to be sold at affordable prices, they're only going to be made available to households who qualify for the affordable housing program. And those 80% of area median income figures are amounts that the federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, releases each spring. So Holbrook falls within the Metro Boston AMI area. And since these are affordable homes, they're going to have what's called that deed rider. I told you there was a PDF version of that deed rider on the website listing for Christies Way. So you can take a look at that, but just know that that deed rider is going to be filed along with the deed at the time of purchase. So that deed rider ensures that the condo is going to remain affordable in the future, even if you or any other buyer chooses to sell it in the future. So just a quick overview of some of the main points that are in that deed rider, just to give you a idea. So the deed rider limits the amount for which you can eventually resell the property. So this purchase opportunity isn't for you if you're looking to buy, flip, resell a home within a year or two. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't be able to sell your home for more than what you paid for it. But it will need to eventually be resold to another affordable buyer. So you might have some return on investment, but you wouldn't expect the same appreciation as market rate homes might be selling for in the area. So there is a formula for the resale price of affordable properties. There's an example of that formula on the last page of the information packet. And that formula also takes the area median income into account. Another thing that the deed rider mentions is that this must be your primary residence. So generally, you can't be renting it out as an investment property, as an Airbnb or a Verbo or something like that. And the deed rider also says that if you would like to refinance or make capital improvements, such as a new roof or some sort of structural change, the state agency that oversees the affordable housing program, which is the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly called DHCD, would need to approve that refinance or capital improvement. So these are brand new condos. They were just built. Those types of improvements to the home would likely not be something that you would be looking to do for many years, but just want to make sure that that's mentioned as well. So the deed rider's on our site. That would be something that would be filed along with the deed to the property at the time of purchase. So if you're interested in applying, I mentioned that you do not need to submit your mortgage pre-approval to apply, but we do suggest that if you're interested in this opportunity, you do try to get that mortgage pre-approval fairly soon, just to know if you're going to be eligible for the opportunity, and then also just because you will need to submit that later on in the process if you're one of those top households on the waiting list. So when you're obtaining that mortgage pre-approval from the bank, we suggest that after you review the information packet that I've been mentioning, you rip out page 8 and just bring it to the bank with you. That lists the required mortgage pre-approval standards for this housing opportunity. And you want the bank to see what those mortgage pre-approval standards are, because you want to make sure that the mortgage product that they're offering you is going to meet the necessary standards. So same with the deed rider. You might want them to see the deed rider as well, since the information that's in there, some of it can be problematic to certain lenders. So there's certain loans that won't accept all the terms of the affordable housing program that are listed on those 2 documents. So for example, the loan that you get needs to have a fixed interest rate throughout the term of the mortgage. It also can't be an FHA or VA loan, since those types of loans don't accept the deed restrictions for this affordable housing program. So you don't want to be in a situation where the lender grants pre-approval because they didn't realize what the stipulations were for this affordable housing program, and then you're not able to get the mortgage commitment and they need to back out at the time of purchase. Kind of along those same lines, we always want to mention that in our experience, it's been very difficult for applicants to successfully close with a Bank of America loan. So we recommend that you don't use Bank of America for your pre-approval or mortgage, because their mortgage products likely aren't suited for affordable homes. But with that being said, you can select any lender or bank that you would like. We just strongly encourage you to choose someone that has experience with the affordable housing program. There's a link included on page 10 of the information packet, and that's going to direct you to the Massachusetts Housing Partnerships website. That's an agency that has that's a great resource for you to be able to find lenders who are familiar with the affordable housing program. So take a look at that for sure. A question here, what page on the deed? So the website, our website listing, so if you go to sebhousing.com and you click on affordable housing opportunities and then I want to buy, you're going to see a Christies Way page on our website, and the deed rider, a sample deed rider, is going to be listed there for you to go ahead and bring. It's page 8 of the information packet that you would want your lender to see as well. And that has the mortgage pre-approval standards. The mortgage pre-approval standards do state that you must provide a down payment of at least 3% of the purchase price. Half of that, so 1.5%, needs to come from your own funds. So your loan or mortgage amount can be up to 97% of the purchase price. Just that 3% is going to be coming out. 1.5% of it needs to be from your own fund. Any questions on the general application process, the deed rider, any of that before I move on to the eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program? Excuse me. All right, so these affordable housing requirements are listed again in the information packet, but they're on page 4. And so the first eligibility requirement for this affordable housing program is that everyone in your household, everyone in an applicant's household, must qualify as a first-time home buyer. And what that means, we'll talk about in a few minutes, but there are exceptions to this requirement as well. Just keep in mind for now, and I'll go through it in just a couple minutes, but keep in mind that even if you qualify for one of the exceptions to the first-time home buyer rule, you would still need to sell any current homes that you own prior to closing on an affordable condo at Christies Way. The second eligibility requirement, which we'll talk a lot more about, is the household's income and assets need to be below the maximum allowable income and assets that are on your screen right now. So it's by household size. And the affordable program has an asset limit of $75,000 for the household. Another eligibility requirement is that households have to be pre-approved for a mortgage. And finally, a household cannot have financial interest in the development or be a related party. So what that means is if you know the developer, if you are related to them, you work for them, you will not be eligible for this lottery. The developer is 75 South Street, LLC. So a question here, no supported documentation needed for the application itself until the lottery. Correct. So all you need to do is submit the application, the supporting income, asset, tax documentation, and mortgage pre-approval. None of that is needed until after the lottery if you are invited to move forward in the process. So if you're one of those top households on the waiting list, we will be asking for that information from you after the lottery. Okay, so to circle back on the eligibility criteria, the first one, the first-time home buyer. So all household members have to be considered first-time home buyers. And you are considered a first-time home buyer if you haven't within the last 3 years owned a home. And that includes through joint ownership. So if anybody in your household was on a deed to a home with their spouse, partner, anyone else, if you're on that deed, if the person's still on the deed, you're considered to be an owner of that home. There are 5 exceptions to the first-time home buyer rule that are in the information packet. The 3 that come up most often, I'm just going to briefly mention. So the first is someone who's referred to as a displaced homemaker. So someone who hasn't worked outside of the home for years, who takes care of the home and the family, and they did own a home previously with their partner or spouse, but they no longer are on the deed because of a legal separation or divorce. And that person had owned the home within the last 5 years, so that's an exception. Another exception is a single parent with at least joint custody of 1 or more children, or someone who's pregnant and is being displaced due to a family breakup and they're looking for a new home. Third exception that comes up the most often is an age-qualified household. So someone who applies, this applies to households with a member who is over the age of 55, and that person is either selling or has recently sold a home to purchase an affordable property. So those are the 3 exceptions that come up the most often. If you qualify or anybody in your household qualifies for one of those exceptions, you do still need to sell your home before buying a condo at Christies Way. So that might mean that a divorce needs to be finalized so that your name is no longer on the deed and all of that, which I realize can take quite a while. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at this opportunity. And then also wanted to touch a little bit, even though we don't need income information from you yet, I want to talk about how we calculate income for the program. And like I said, these units are only being made available to households who qualify based on these income parameters. So if you're looking at your screen now, you see that a 1-person household would need to have a total household income below $82,950 to be eligible for this opportunity. You're going to see these amounts everywhere. They're on the information packet. They're on the first page of the application. So these are the amounts currently that you would need to fall under depending on your household size. Even though you're not required to submit any documentation to us yet, if you are found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent a link or an attachment to a documentation requirements guide. And that guide is going to detail exactly what types of documentation, such as pay stubs, benefit statements, tax returns, all of that, that you're going to need to submit depending on your income source. So you should read that guide carefully just so you're prepared for what you will need to submit to us after the lottery if you're one of those top households, because you'll have about 7 to 10 days after the lottery to get that documentation into us. A general rule of thumb, everyone, regardless of their financial circumstances, will need to submit tax returns from the last 3 years. And if you have a job, pay stubs, that documentation requirements guide will let you know how many and all of that. So again, just to give a basic overview on how we calculate income, even though this isn't going to come up for you until after you submit your documentation further on down the line. So income for this program is required to be counted as a projection of your income for the next 12 months for all household members, and that's for all income coming into the household. So that includes, if someone in your household makes works and has bonuses or overtime. The only exceptions to that are minors who are working. So if you have, a 15-year-old child who's working, we're not going to count their wage income when we are figuring your total household income. And then also if you have a dependent full-time student who's over the age of 18, maybe a 20-year-old who's in college, if they're working, it's only the first $480 of their wage that we would count when we're determining your eligibility. We are required to count gross income, so not the net income that you make before or after taxes, although many people do not take home the full amount of their salary. They're instead paying health insurance, paying towards Social Security and all of that. But unfortunately, it is the gross income that needs to be counted according to the program. And then how we calculate that income is not always one size fits all, because every household has different income circumstances. And, some applicants have a weekly or bi-weekly standard, consistent weekly salary that, they receive the same amount in their paycheck every week. But then there's some applicants who are going to be self-employed, maybe they're working seasonally. And in those circumstances, we might need to look further back into your past wages and income in order to project your anticipated income for the next 12 months, which is what our goal is when we are looking at your finances. And then specifically for applicants who are self-employed, you're going to need to complete a profit and loss statement for your business and provide supporting documentation for that business. So if you're self-employed, your business expenses are going to be taken into account. But anybody who's not self-employed, it always is the gross income that we count. We can't, deduct from your total household income because you pay for, a car payment or health insurance, unfortunately. So just want to make sure that that's clear. So in general, any income that you have been making, we're going to have to assume that you're going to continue making it going forward unless we have some sort of definitive documentation that you're no longer going to be earning that income source. So an example might be, a written letter from your employer that's confirming that bonuses or overtime are not going to be allowable in the coming year. Or maybe you switch jobs and your tax returns are showing that you worked somewhere else last year. So as long as we have a letter confirming what your last date was, all of that, we should be good. And then when you're filling out the application, make sure that you're accounting for every income source that you have coming into the household. So not just wages, but Social Security, if you have child support, unemployment or workman's compensation, pension benefits, periodic payments from family members, that sort of thing, any assets that are generating income. You want to make sure we know about that. So to apply for the lottery, there's no minimum household income requirement, but of course you have to apply and be eligible for that mortgage. So you're going to need to meet the lender and the bank's requirements in order to get that mortgage pre-approval that is required later on in the process. And then I mentioned the asset limit. So $75,000 is the asset limit at the time of your application, and that's for the whole household. So if you have, several accounts from different members of the household, you have to add all of those up to see what your asset amount is right now. If you happen to have a family member or a friend who is planning to gift part of your down payment to you, that it also would be considered part of your asset amount. So just make sure that you are disclosing that on your application and you've counted that towards what your total is. Assets could be, cash in your savings checkings accounts, CDs, the net value of any stocks or retirement accounts like 401ks, bonds, Venmo, PayPal, all of that would be added up. You might think it's a little strange that we are required to count money that is tied up in retirement accounts, especially since many of you might not be planning to retire or access that money for quite a while. But the program does require us to do that because in theory, you could withdraw funds, even with a large penalty from those accounts. So it is the post-penalty amount or the net cash value that we need to count when we're considering that asset amount. So in order to figure what that is, you would need to ask the financial institution that has your 401k, for example. You'd be asked to get a letter from them that lists the post-penalty amount. So if you were to withdraw all the money right now, how much would you have in the account? And then we don't need you don't need to tally up any personal assets like jewelry, cars, that sort of thing. That would not be counted towards your asset amount. Would I please explain the difference between income and assets? Right. So income is any income you have coming into the household, like your paycheck, your employment, Social Security benefits, any cash that you have coming in, where an asset would be what you have potentially accruing interest in a bank account, retirement accounts, savings accounts, you know, stocks, that sort of thing. So to go back on the other slide here, the income amounts, the maximum household income amounts are here, and then that asset limit for the household is $75,000. So, all right. So, like I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in the opportunity, we encourage you to apply as soon as possible to get the process started. What will happen when you submit your lottery application is we'll review it. We'll contact you if any information appears to be missing or incorrect. You'll be given a chance to go ahead and correct it and resubmit if necessary. And if you're found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent a lottery application number in the form of a series of numbers. That's the number that's going to be drawn in the actual lottery. It's just meant to be an anonymous identifier, so your name isn't called during the lottery itself, just for privacy purposes. So it's not a ranking of any sort. It just corresponds with the order in which we approved your application. So if you were the very first person to submit your completed application for Christies Way, your number is going to be A.001. On your application, you will have also indicated, and we will have confirmed, if you are a type 1 or type 2 household. So that's just corresponding basically with your household size. So all household types can apply for these 2-bedroom condos, but type 2 households are going to have priority over type 1 households. And that's really just because the program wants to make sure that smaller households are not given priority for unit sizes that they may not actually require. So this is going to mean that all type 1 households are going to be behind type 2 households when we establish those waiting lists following the lottery. And there's more information about household composition and household types on page 9 of the information packet. But just for your reference, all households that have 3 or 4 members are going to be considered type 2 households, as well as some 2-person households, like a head of household with dependents, for example. So just keep all that in mind. Is only a percentage of assets counted or all of it? So yes, it's all assets. Like I said, the exceptions to it are that if you have a 401k or a 403b, for example, those are retirement accounts. It would only be the net cash value that's being counted. And when we're talking about we're talking about assets being counted towards your income, it's only the interest that's being counted towards your total household income. But when we're tallying up your total household assets for that $75,000 asset limit, it is every amount that's in each of your bank accounts, for example. So if you have 3 separate bank accounts and they all have $15,000, then you know, your total, and those are your only assets, then your total assets would be $45,000 in that case. And again, the lottery application deadline is February 19th. So a couple weeks away, about 3 weeks away. And the lottery itself is going to be held virtually, much as in the same way as this Zoom call, on March 4th at 6 p.m. And to create we'll create those waiting lists shortly after the lottery. Top households are going to be invited by SEB Housing to move forward to reserve a unit, get the mortgage, and purchase the property, hopefully. And so, like I said, it'll be the same sort of thing. It'll be a Zoom session, same sort of format as this call. And depending on the number of applicants, the lottery application numbers will either be drawn from a box, held up to the screen and recorded, or they'll be sorted by computer, and I'll screen share with you just as I am with this presentation. Every lottery number will be drawn. Sometimes when you think of lotteries, we think there's just going to be one winner, or in this case, 3 winners, since there's 3 condos. But this lottery, that's not how this works. This lottery is held just really in order to establish a waiting list for these condos. And the lottery creates a order of priority for the next steps in the process. So if you're watching the night of the lottery, sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what your placement means, and that's because you don't really know yet if you're watching the lottery. All the household types, type 1, type 2, are going to be mixed together, and we're just pulling them and sorting them later on off the call. So after we sort the results and send you the waiting list, which we always try to do that same night, so you'll, within a couple hours of the lottery, you will know where you fell on the waiting list after we sorted by the different household types and priorities. So for example, if a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery, they're still going to be behind all of those type 2 households on the waiting list. And when we're drawing the numbers, you don't yet know who's a type 1 and who's a type 2 household. So also, as you're watching the lottery, there could be households who were entered into the lottery that are later found to be ineligible by SCB Housing once they've submitted all of the income information, or they could just decide that they're no longer interested in purchasing one of the condos. So all that is to say, if your number is called or is drawn later on in the process, maybe you're 5th or 6th on the waiting list, you shouldn't lose hope of being able to move forward in this process, because you might still have an opportunity to move forward and purchase one of the condos, because it's probably not going to be the case that the first 3 people on each waiting list are the ones who are going to buy the condos. So following the lottery, like I said, we do our best to send out the results right away within a few hours, if not at the very latest the next morning. And they'll all be sent by email. If you don't have an email, it'll be sent by mail. And once you're reviewing that email, you're going to find your lottery application number, and you can see where you fall on the waiting list. And then you'll have a better idea as to whether or not you'll be moving forward in the process. If you are one of those top households on the waiting list, we're going to send you, SCB Housing will send you a separate invitation to move forward in the process. And that is the point that you'll be asked to provide all of your income, asset, and tax documentation in order for us to confirm your eligibility for the affordable housing program. So hopefully by that point in the process, you've been able to check out the documentation requirements guide that was sent to you, and you've been able to gather some of the information that was spelled out in that document. And then you'll have, like I said, about 7 to 10 days to get all of the required documentation into us. We'll work with you. It's rare that we receive a application or supporting documentation that is 100% complete on the first try. And that's for a couple reasons. So the first is just there's a lot of information that you need to submit. And then also sometimes your application may not be complete because you've submitted everything we needed, but then we have more questions for you based on, bank deposits or pay stubs that we have. And, we'll work with you through the process to be sure that we have everything we need to make that determination. So the question here is if a household type 1 is pulled, they put after a type 2. Yep, so type 2 households, larger households, have priority for these units because it's a 2-bedroom condo. So there's more on the, in the information packet, there's a lot more information on the order of priority in terms of the household types. So like if you're a 2-person household, 3-person household, a 1-person household that needs an extra bedroom based on a reasonable accommodation or a disability, it tells you on there where you will fall in terms of a type 1 or a type 2 household. When do you think they'll be closing on the condos? So the condos are ready now, as in terms of what the developer told us. So the lottery is March 4th. We still have to gather everyone's documentation and make sure that they are eligible for the affordable housing program. And then, normally once you're approved, I'm still getting to the part in the process where we need to send files off to the state agency who reviews those. So, a couple of months after the lottery is what I would say. So I don't think a closing date would be before May 1st at the earliest, because there's still a few steps in the process after the lottery. And one of them I'm going to talk about now, because whoever is initially found eligible by SEB Housing, our next step in the process, if you're one of those top households that has already submitted all of the documentation to SEB Housing, you've been found eligible, we're going to then submit your file to the state agency that I mentioned a little bit earlier that oversees this program, called the Executive Office of Housing and Community Development. Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. They used to be the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD. And they will do a file review and give us the green light if you're eligible to move forward. Their review process usually takes about 2 weeks, from what I've heard. Once EOHLC has approved your application, the process becomes similar to what it would be if you were purchasing a market rate home. And then we'd like to mention too, at this point, once you're further along in the process, you can decide to hire an attorney to assist you in navigating through the home buying process. We encourage that. It's perfectly acceptable and likely the smart thing to do. Purchasing a home is a huge decision, and you always want to be sure that you understand the process and are well represented during it. So once EHLC, the state agency, has approved your application, you'll be put in touch with the owner and the developer of the condos. And at that point, you'll be scheduling a time to tour the condo if you haven't already. You complete a reservation agreement with them. And then in order to reserve the home, you'll be putting down a $500 refundable deposit. After you reserve the home, the one that you've chosen, you'll have 10 business days to sign the purchase and sale agreement and place the required partial deposit, the 1.5% of the sales price minus that $500 that you've already paid when you reserved the unit. And then your purchase and sale agreement is going to also include certain agreed upon contingencies and a closing date. So when you sign that P&S, it's one of the final steps in the home buying process. So the finish line at that point, once you've signed the purchase and sale agreement with the owner, is near. So once that purchase and sale is signed, you're going to need to go back to the bank who issued your mortgage pre-approval and obtain what's called a mortgage commitment. The process varies a little bit depending on your lender, but generally they're going to want to review all of the documentation you have up until this point. So your purchase and sale agreement, the deed rider that I mentioned, they'll do an appraisal on the condo. Households for the affordable housing program need to remain eligible up until closing. So about 3 to 4 weeks prior to your closing date, whatever that ends up being, SEB Housing needs to conduct a final review. So at that point, we'd be asking for updated pay stubs, bank statements, your mortgage commitment letter to confirm that you're still eligible for the affordable housing program. And at that point, SEB Housing would be forwarding your final package again over to the state for their final review. And if you've maintained your eligibility for the affordable housing program throughout this process, through the time that you applied, through your closing, you can go ahead and move towards that closing date. Once you've closed on the home, you can move in. There's no future income or asset eligibility reviews. So if you purchase the home, you get a huge raise a month later, that's fine. You're not, there's nothing that says that you need to maintain a certain, you don't need to stay below that 80% of area median income threshold after you've already been living in the home. So that's something to keep in mind. That's always a question that people have. Is there anything that changes? So if don't qualify for this development, will there still be waiting lists for others' lotteries? Yep. So we have lotteries all the time for both rentals and home ownership. There is not going to be another lottery for Christies Way. So there's only these 3 affordable units at this development. But you're perfectly, you're able to apply to other lotteries. You don't have to even just apply to one right now. You can apply to another one if you're interested on another home buying and another home ownership opportunity. If you wanted to submit your application for more than one, you could do that. And yeah, so that about covers what I wanted to get to tonight in terms of information from the information packet, and then also just kind of the main points of the eligibility, lottery process, home buying process. You can find that lottery application on our website, like I mentioned, and the info packet is there as well, which has a lot of the information that I mentioned tonight, the deed rider as well, that you're going to want to show to the lender. Is the mortgage based off of your income? Yep, your income and assets is what the lender is going to be looking at. So they're going to be asking for information from you in terms of like your pay stubs and all of that. So the amount that you will be approved for will be based off of what you're making. Any questions about anything that was covered or anything, if you've already reviewed the information packet that you have a question on? Yep, I'll wait until you have questions here. And then again, just remember, February 19th is the application deadline. They're all hardwood floors throughout. I have a few things here. I don't think I have that info from them. I do not have the flooring. I didn't mention this. They have unfinished basements. In terms of pets, there's up to 2 pets allowed per unit. I believe there is central air. I'm going to write these down for you and I can get back to you on that. If you could send me a private message with your email address, I will make sure that I get these answers for you. Hardwood floors throughout. I will check on that for you. And then central AC. And gas or electric. So yeah, usually I have the gas or electric answer for you, but I don't. And I don't want to speculate. Yeah, I'll ask all of these for you. Sure. Yep, I will. If both of you who, you know what, everybody who would like that information, please send me your email address in a direct message. Not to everybody because you don't want to share that, but I will get that for you. Could hear back from them by tomorrow, so you can. Yep, that's private. 17742. The message you sent me is private. Yep. And then Lindsay, I got yours. Are you allowed to finish the basement? That would be that probably would be considered a that was something I will ask about as well. But I believe that would be considered a alteration that you would need to run by the state. You could do it with your own money. It wouldn't have anything to do with the purchase price or anything like that. But I believe you would need to check in with the state based on what's in the deed rider. I'm just getting your email addresses here. But I will check on that for you as well. Nope, I have all your questions, but let's see. Email address here. Oh yeah, Jennifer, I have yours. Sorry, just give me 1 second here. All right, thank you guys. I have 4 email addresses. I will get back to you tomorrow. So I saw a question up here, what's not included with the unit? So it's an unfinished basement, like I said, and I believe, give me a second before I quote this. I don't know why I want to say that there's a washer dryer hookup, but the machines aren't included. I know that there's, stove. Yeah. So there's laundry hookups, but not the actual machines. As you can see, this is a picture of the kitchen. So the stove, microwave, dishwasher, that sort of thing are here. Refrigerator that's not shown. So that's all there. The condo fee includes master insurance, snow removal from not from your walkway, but from the road itself, and all of that. Yep, the fridge is in there. You just can't see it in that photo. I have one more email address here. So I'll make sure to get all of these questions back to you guys. These are things that sometimes we don't really anticipate. Yep, open house, I'll let you know that as well. When I email the developer, I will ask about the open house, and I'll get all of that information to you hopefully by tomorrow. I might not have an open house date by tomorrow, but I think I'll have the answer to all of these other questions about the unit itself by tomorrow. So keep an eye on that. The email will come from info@sdbhousing.com, and that's also the email address that you can email your application to, and any other questions that come up after tonight, that's the best way to get in touch with us. So definitely keep us posted on any other questions as you're filling out your application, or if you have any questions that come up that you just didn't think of tonight. And I appreciate all of your participation and questions. Anything else before I let you go? Thank you guys so much. Have a good night. We'll be in touch. Thanks. Bye now.